Today, the new boss release also released this new prayer. Now, this is the Eclipsed Soul Prayer, and we're going to be testing out in this video. What it does is it gives you an extra 4% crit chance for the whole time it's up, and it heals you for 10% of your max life points over 6 seconds each time you critically strike. Now, what I want to do first of all is check out how this actually functions in terms of the crit chance. So we're going to check on our Grimoire here, and you'll see a buff down here. Now I want to chuck our Great Construct Blast here, so we have 6 seconds here of our Eclipsed Soul, and now for that 6 seconds, 10% of our max health will be healed up. Now this doesn't stack, of course, but I want to see if critting again will reset the timer. It doesn't. Okay. So basically, the way this works is you have to wait for the full 6 seconds to run out. Regardless of if you crit during that time or not, you will not have it renewed, which is interesting. So you'll have to renew it again by critting again, as you saw most of those crit, after the time's expired. That's going to be a little bit of downtime now between. For magic, it's not too big of a deal. We have Great Concentrated Blast. We crit an absolute crap ton. But for things like Necromancy, which we'll be testing as well, it could be a little bit of an unfortunate situation. Not a big deal though. Right, so what I'm going to do in this video is I am going to test this with magic for the crit chance, because we're going to use a Staff of Armadillo with this thing. Of course, we want to see if critting 4% of the time more is going to be a big deal or not, whether us using the actual standard and not the curses is a damage loss, damage increase. We'll see how it goes and see about the healing return. But then also, because this gives 10% of max HP back, we'll be swapping over to Necromancy as well, and using tank gear with the life points boosts to be actually used. So we'll have a higher base health points, we'll get more health back, and we'll see if that pays off as well. So let's go. Before moving on, thank you to HelloFresh for sponsoring this video. If you're someone who doesn't like to spend ages thinking about what to have for your dinner, or maybe you just don't have the time to get out there, do your groceries, and then have to plan out exactly what you're going to have for those groceries every single day, then HelloFresh is a great thing for you to try out. In fact, right now, HelloFresh has their biggest menu yet, with 50+ dinner options, all of which suit a healthy lifestyle. When you order from HelloFresh, everything that you get is packed with fresh ingredients, and it all comes to your door pre-packed and portion sized, ready to go. In fact, there's also cooking instructions for those of you who maybe aren't as kitchen savvy. It's super easy to follow along and really make yourself some amazing food. HelloFresh also understands that life changes and plans change, and so your HelloFresh can change with you as well. You can quite easily customize your delivery from week to week. You can mix and match the options that they give you here with fit and wholesome, family friendly stuff, quick and easy stuff, vegetarian, any option that you may want. Everything can be tailored to your schedule as well. You can change your delivery date, or you could even skip a week whenever you're not able to cook at home. Not to mention, they also update their menu with each season change too. So click the link in the description or the pinned comment, or use my code and get 10 free meals plus free breakfast for life. 1 breakfast item per box while subscription is active if you're in the US. Outside the US, the local discounts will apply. And thank you to HelloFresh for sponsoring this video. Okay, so something that I just noticed is if you crit with this and then change, you immediately lose the buff, right? Which is fine, makes sense, because you can't even soul split when you're not on soul split, right? Cool, no problem. However, if you do crit with this and then change and then go back to it, you still have a cooldown of like 4, 3, 2, 1. And I can't reproc this until that's completely gone. Meaning that I've lost the heal. And when I come back, the heal doesn't come back as well. So for example, if I use a crit here, I'm healing, change to melee, it's gone, change back. Change to melee, change back. You're going to see that for those seconds here, I actually don't get any healing either. So you're kind of just putting yourself on cooldown for being able to get any healing if you prayer flick, which feels a little bit bad and kind of makes you think that the tank setup is probably not going to benefit from this unless you like actually don't have to prayer flick whatsoever. So any sort of other changing of prayers kind of cuts this off pretty badly and then leaves it with just a crit. Now, I don't know if this is intended or not. It maybe it's not intended to be like this, but right now this is how this is functioning. Okay, so after using this prayer probably for like just a few hours, honestly, I think it's been about 3 to 4 hours I've been testing it out at different places. I really think I can probably give my thoughts on it now, and whether you guys are going to find much use for it in terms of PVM or what uses it may have. So let's start off with when I tested this with regular sort of combat, like just replacing this basically with Soul Split and my DPS curses. Now, I was pretty interested in the first place to try this out with magic because with all the other combat styles, I couldn't really seeing it being anything overly worth using, but with magic and a Staff of Armadyl, it could have been interesting, right? Getting that extra crit chance maybe could have been nice to see. However, while you are going to crit a little bit more, the 4% isn't like completely game changing, of course. Like it's 4%, right? Like what do you expect? However, you are going to see a few more crits here and there, but the amount of damage that you deal because of going from the tier 99 curse to a tier 85 prayer to increase your damage is definitely noticeable. Even if you do crit more, the amount of damage you output isn't going to compete because of the fact that you're outputting less damage per hit anyway. So while you are still hitting those blue numbers a lot more often, you are going to struggle to actually keep up with the damage that you would do in the first place. So for you guys that are looking on like high-end PVMers, maybe you were thinking, hey, this could be super interesting with the Staff of Armadyl as well, like what I was kind of thinking I wanted to test it with. This probably isn't going to be worth your time to actually bother doing. You still want to stick with the regular Ancient Curses, and you want to stick with Soul Split. Now, the main reason that this kind of sucks, it's because the DPS isn't far. Like, you can feel that it's pretty close, and for normal, like, prayers, the DPS is pretty good. Like, this isn't going to cost you the 1 bill or whatever it costs at the moment for a, Prayer Soul Codex, so it's pretty good in that sense for the extra bit of damage. But the actual Soul Split, you heal so much more from Soul Split than you do with this. It's weird because, right, if you think about it, with Soul Split, you don't see the numbers that you're going to be healing. It's really something that you never actually think of, to be honest. However, with this, you see the numbers ticking over in healing, and the amount of healing that you get back from this compared to using it with Soul Split, it's miles apart. The amount of difference is huge. You struggle with food in this. It's way different. This makes you realize how much healing you're actually getting from using Soul Split flicking, because it's worlds apart in terms of how much food you're going to be using in certain places. The amount of time that you spend munching down stuff and drinking sourdough and brews, you're actually going to be dropping your damage output as well, especially if you are using solid food, but also downing brews drains your stats even if you're on overloads. They will go back up, of course, but for the time that they aren't up again, you're still going to be having less stats than normal. So the healing in terms of replacing this with like Soul Split is just not there. But that doesn't mean that this has no use whatsoever. And we're going to talk about an overall thing of this afterwards. Just wanted to break it up into sections. This is like replacing it with regular DPS stuff. It still has some uses. We'll talk about it. After that, I chucked on all of my Necromancy tank gear to boost my life points as much as possible. The reason I did this was because this healing from this scales by 10% of your max life points. So really, you boost your life points as much as you can, and then you'll get 10% of that back, giving you a decent amount more healing over the 6 seconds. So the plan with this was to see how easy it would be to just camp this and treat it like Soul Split, because I know a lot of people maybe will have access to Necromancy tank gear, but you won't have access to Soul Split yet, possibly. Soul Split is a much higher level thing to unlock. Level 92 prayer is definitely not cheap. And of course, you still have to unlock Ancient Curses from all the quests too. So if you don't have Soul Split, this feels really good. Like, the amount of healing you're going to get back from this is actually pretty decent. But it is still, again, not a replacement and not like another sort of gameplay option. For you guys that are already at the point where you have Soul Split unlocked, you don't replace this with that. This is just basically going to be a lower level step up, bit of a stepping stone for players that haven't reached that point yet. Give them a little bit of extra healing in between stuff is probably what Jagex was thinking with this. Another thing as well is Necromancy takes advantage of Split Soul to output a crap ton of damage. So if you do have Soul Split and Split Soul unlocked, there's no way you would ever even consider this. Even if the healing was like just as good, you wouldn't really consider this because of the fact that you throw out so much damage with Split Soul, and you definitely notice it. Like, you'll miss that damage output if you've had it before, and then you swapped over to this style. So really, it's not something to consider. It's also probably worth mentioning that using Necromancy, you can crit pretty consistently, especially with Grimoire and biting perks and all that, right? But even then, you don't crit like you do with magic, and so you will have some downtime where you're not actually healing anything just because of the fact that your window to reset or reproc this is actually directly after the 6 seconds ends. So you have to crit then. It can't be during those 6 seconds you land a crit and then it'll add that time back on. If it did give you that, this would probably feel a lot better. Those 3 seconds could make a pretty decent amount of difference in terms of how much healing you would get. and whether it's going to keep you alive in a few situations or not. But in the places that I tried this, there was absolutely no way in hell that I could just use this with tank gear and then try and stay alive without using anything else. Like with Soul Split and tank gear, you can usually just camp that and get through most of a boss really without having to worry. But with this, that just wasn't going to be an option. Okay, so overall, what do I think of the new prayer? Is it worth it? If you're an endgame PVMer, a higher level player, or you already have Soul Split unlocked, then no. This prayer is probably not going to be worth it. Unless some crazy high level PVMer comes up with a super interesting, niche and unique way to make this really good, which could happen, don't get me wrong. This is day one of me testing this out. This could definitely pop up where someone goes, holy hell, actually this mixed with this works really well. But unless that happens, you're probably not going to have a reason to go out and buy this, because you'll never really have the urge to swap from curses and a Soul Split to this as an option. Even as a Slayer thing, this isn't going to be that useful if you have Soul Split, because Soul Split's always going to heal more anyway. And of course, the way Soul Split works is if you do AoE damage, then you heal from that AoE damage too. With this, if you proc the crit, it doesn't matter how many crits you proc, you're only healing the same amount of stuff. However, if you are a lower level player, this thing will probably be pretty cheap by the time we're done. I paid like 140 mil for it. I believe it's about 80 mil as of me recording this right now, and it'll likely be quite a bit lower by the time you guys see this video. So for a lower level player, this is only a level 75 prayer to use. And I mean, the healing is pretty decent, and it does increase your crit chance by 4%. It is an overhead though, so you're probably going to be prayer flicking it. And if you can be bothered prayer flicking from regular protection prayers, without curses, you're probably not doing a lot of high level content anyway. So it depends. If you think this fits into your playstyle and you think this is going to be pretty good for you, then get your hands on it and absolutely go for it. It's probably going to be really cheap as well anyway, so you might as well. But for anybody who has any high level ambitions or any sort of high level gear, this is definitely a mid-level sort of prayer and not something that's going to help out a ton. So my thoughts overall on this are, it's cool. I like it. I think the idea behind it is really interesting and unique, and I think Jagex have put something out that is pretty cool. It is definitely something for mid-level players, low-level players, but it's needed. I mean, there's a big gap between the lower level to the mid level and then jumping up to high level, where there's a lot of stuff that you would just normally skip and just not bother with. But again, as soon as you unlock Soul Split, it just becomes absolutely irrelevant. But yeah, I think this is a cool addition to the prayer book. It makes it a little bit stronger, keeps it a little bit more interesting. It just isn't going to make people swap back. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. And other than that, guys, I'll catch you all in the next one.